You hear the name Titanic. And what comes to mind? Probably images of luxury, of icebergs, of tragedy, a whole legend, really, frozen in time. But before it was any of that, before it was a legend, before it was even a ship, it was something else entirely. It was just an idea. And that's the thing. In the very beginning, the name Titanic meant nothing. Nobody whispered it with any kind of awe or sadness. It was just a sketch on a piece of paper, a vision made of numbers and calculations. But right there, in those lines, was this incredible, unprecedented ambition to build something that could dominate the ocean. And this is where our story really kicks off. Not out on the open water, but in the fire and the noise, where this unbelievable dream was literally forged from pure ambition and cold, hard steel. I want you to just picture it for a second. It's Belfast, 1909. The Harland and Wolff shipyards are just buzzing, almost like a living thing. The air is so thick with the smell of burning coal and hot metal, you can taste it. And every single day, thousands of men show up to build this colossus, a mountain of steel rising up out of the mud. And out of all that monumental effort, a single, really powerful word started to emerge: unsinkable. It was more than a word. It was a belief, a declaration of pride in their engineering. But as we all know now, it was just an illusion, a promise that the cold, dark Atlantic had no intention of keeping. And you can see from this timeline just how fast that dream became a reality. I mean, construction kicks off in 1909. By May of 1911, this giant beast slides into the water for the very first time. And then, less than a year after that, on April 10th, 1912, the dream is finally ready to set sail. Okay, so the ship is built. Our focus now kind of shifts from the steel plates to the souls on board. Because this wasn't just a ship. For a few short, brilliant days, it was a floating city, absolutely teeming with life. And you had these two completely different worlds living side by side on this one ship. Up in first class, life was like being in a grand luxury hotel. It was all elegance and quiet sophistication. But you go just a few decks down into third class, and the laughter was louder. It was this vibrant mix of languages and cultures, all united by this one shared dream of a new life in America. The opulence was, it's just breathtaking. You had a grand staircase with this massive glass dome over it, a state-of-the-art gym, a heated swimming pool, even a Turkish bath. These weren't just perks. They were designed to make the richest people in the world forget they were even at sea. And at the helm of this floating palace, Captain Edward Smith. We're talking about the company's most experienced, most trusted captain. And this was supposed to be it for him, his final voyage before a nice, long retirement. His presence was just so reassuring. Everyone on board trusted him completely. So you've got this perfect world, this floating city, and it's sailing on, completely unaware that it's heading straight for its own destiny. Okay, so the date is April 14th. The ocean is described by people on board as a huge sheet of glass. It was eerily calm. Now, for any experienced sailor, a sea that still, with no moon in the sky, well, that can be a lot more dangerous than a storm. As the day wears on, warnings start to flood into the radio room. Icebergs, spotted right along their route. But the telegraph operators, they're swamped with private messages from the wealthy passengers. Some warnings get passed along to the bridge, but, and this is so crucial, others don't. The urgency just gets lost in all the chatter. And here is a critical, absolutely fateful number: 22 knots. That's almost 25 miles per hour. That's how fast the Titanic was steaming directly into a known ice field. They wanted to get to New York early, you see, to prove they weren't just the biggest ship, but the fastest, too. And then, at 11:40 p.m., you get the cry that just pierces the cold, still night, coming from the lookout's nest. A shadow in the dark, spotted way, way too late. You'd think the impact would be this violent, huge explosion, right? But it wasn't. Survivors described it as this dull, deep noise, a strange scraping sound that ran through the whole ship like a shiver. For a lot of the passengers, it was barely even noticeable. But down below the waterline, the damage was absolutely fatal. And just like that, the great promise was over. What followed was a slow 3-hour descent into the dark, freezing Atlantic. So here is the fatal math. The Titanic was brilliantly designed. It could actually stay afloat with 4 of its watertight compartments completely flooded. But the iceberg sliced open 5. The verdict, delivered by the ship's own designer who happened to be on board, was instant and absolute. The ship was going down. And this reveals the most devastating failure of them all. You had over 2,200 people on board, but the lifeboats only had space for 1,178. The regulations at the time were just tragically out of date. And this simple, horrifying math sealed the fate of hundreds of people before the first boat was even lowered into the water. The first lifeboats are lowered, but a lot of them are half empty. People just don't believe the ship is actually sinking. The orchestra, famously, plays on to try and keep everyone calm. Then the bow sinks deeper, and the stern rises impossibly high into the air. At 2:18 in the morning, there's this terrifying roar as the immense stress just breaks the ship in two. The propellers rise up one last time against the stars, and then it's just gone. Over 1,500 people. That's how many were lost in the freezing dark that night. It's just a staggering number. Only 705 survivors were pulled from the water by the rescue ship, the Carpathia, hours later, just stunned, silent witnesses to something that should have been impossible. The next day, the world woke up to the news, and they just couldn't believe it. The unsinkable ship was at the bottom of the ocean. It was a tragedy so immense, it basically shattered an entire era's confidence in its own technology and its idea of progress. And so, the Titanic rests today, a silent monument 2.5 miles beneath the surface. Its story is this timeless, chilling reminder that our technology is only as good as the judgment of the people who use it, and that overconfidence, well, that can be the most dangerous current of all. So it leaves us with a question, right? What other icebergs might we be steaming towards today, completely convinced of our own unsinkable progress?